The First Contact and Confusion. Supreme Commander Zextal of the Zalaxian Imperial Fleet stood motionless on the command deck of the Stellar Dominance, his iridescent scales reflecting the soft purple glow of the ship's quantum displays. The massive vessel, stretching nearly 20 kilometers from bow to stern, represented the pinnacle of Zalaxian military might. For 3,000 cycles, the Empire had methodically expanded across the galaxy, incorporating or subjugating every civilization they encountered. Until now. Supreme Commander, his chief sensor officer called out, multifaceted eyes fixed on the holographic readouts, we've detected unusual energy signatures from the third planet of this system. Zextal's inner eyelids flickered with interest. The Zalaxian advanced scouts had reported this system contained a newly spacefaring species called humans. Initial observations suggested they were barely beyond their planetary confines, making them prime candidates for Imperial absorption. "Show me," he commanded, his translator converting the clicks and whistles of his native tongue into the standard Galactic common language. The main view screen activated, revealing a collection of what appeared to be primitive spacecraft orbiting the blue-green world. The vessels were oddly shaped, lacking the sleek, biomimetic design philosophy of Zalaxian ships. Some were clearly cargo haulers, others appeared to be passenger vessels, and a few seemed to be crude defensive platforms. "Fascinating," Zextal mused. "They haven't even developed proper geometric harmonics in their ship design. This should be straightforward." He straightened his ceremonial combat harness and addressed his communications officer. "Open a channel to their primary orbital facility." The response came almost immediately, but not in the way Zextal expected. Instead of a formal acknowledgement, a cheerful human voice filled the bridge. "Hello there. Welcome to Earth space. I'm Station Director Sarah Chen. You've caught us at a great time. We're just about to start our annual orbital regatta. Would you like to watch?" Zextal's command staff exchanged confused glances. This wasn't the fearful respect they typically encountered from pre-absorption species. He cleared his throat membranes and responded with carefully measured authority. "This is Supreme Commander Zextal of the Zalaxian Empire. Your species has been identified as suitable for integration into our dominion. Prepare your leadership for immediate—" "Oh, wonderful," Director Chen interrupted. "We love making new friends, but you might want to adjust your position slightly. You're right in the path of the Solar Sail Division. We wouldn't want any accidents with the Junior Racing League." Zextal's scales rippled with irritation. "Perhaps I wasn't clear. The Zalaxian Empire commands the most powerful fleet in the known galaxy. Your technology is primitive, your defenses negligible. We—" A new voice cut in, young and excited. "Mom, look. Their ship has crystalline quantum matrices. Can I scan it for my science project? I'm doing a paper on obsolete propulsion systems." "Now, Tommy," Chen's voice carried the gentle tone of a parent's reminder. "What have we said about scanning visitors without permission?" "Sorry, but it's so cool. It's like seeing a steam engine in real life." Zextal's tail twitched violently. "Silence. Your insolence will not be tolerated. Our sensors indicate your weapons are barely capable of interplanetary travel. Your ships use simple fusion drives. You cannot hope to—" "Oh, those," Chen chuckled. "Those are just our hobby vessels. We keep the old tech running for historical appreciation. Speaking of which, would you like to register your ship for the Vintage Spacecraft exhibition next month? We have a whole category for pre-quantum designs." The Supreme Commander's scales had turned from their usual majestic purple to a mottled gray of confusion and anger. He gestured sharply to his tactical officer. "Show them our might. Target their primary defensive satellite." The Stellar Dominance's main weapon array hummed to life, gathering enough energy to vaporize a small moon. The massive beam lanced out toward what appeared to be Earth's largest orbital defense platform. What happened next would be debated in Zalaxian military academies for generations. The beam simply disappeared. Not deflected, not absorbed, just gone, as if it had never existed. Oh my! Chen's voice carried a note of amusement. Was that weapons discharge intentional? If you're having trouble with your power regulators, our maintenance teams would be happy to help. We have quite a bit of experience with vintage systems. Impossible, Zextal whispered. Scan that platform again. His science officer worked frantically at the controls, then froze. Supreme Commander, I can't. What do you mean you can't? The platform, sir. According to our most detailed scans, it doesn't exist. But we can see it. We can see all their stations and ships. But they register as nothing more than background radiation. The bridge fell silent except for the soft hum of electronics. In that silence, Director Chen's voice returned, gentle but firm. Supreme Commander Zextal, perhaps we should start over. Humanity would be happy to establish diplomatic relations with the Zylaxian Empire. But first, you might want to review our public information packet. Tommy, would you mind sending them the beginner's guide to human space technology? Moments later, the Stellar Dominance's computer cores were flooded with data. As Zextal watched the information scroll past, his inner eyelids began fluttering rapidly, the Zylaxian equivalent of a cold sweat. The documents were clearly marked elementary school level, but they described technologies that made his mighty flagship look like a child's toy. This is impossible, he stammered. You cannot have mastered dimensional phase technology. The power requirements alone would. Oh, that old thing. Tommy's voice piped up again. We covered that in 4th grade physics. Did you know some of our oldest ships used to need actual matter for fuel? Can you imagine? Zextal sank into his command chair, his proud posture completely abandoned. Director Chen, he managed at last. I believe we may have misinterpreted the nature of our potential relationship. Don't worry about it at all, Chen replied warmly. It happens more often than you'd think. Now, about that regatta. We're about to start the light sail demonstrations. Would you like us to clear a viewing position for your ship? The educational opportunities are excellent. As the Stellar Dominance's crew watched in stunned silence, dozens of small craft with gossamer-thin solar sails began assembling for their race. Each one, they now realized, contained enough computing power to run their entire fleet. And beyond them, Earth turned serenely in its orbit, its seemingly primitive stations and ships now revealed as technological marvels beyond their comprehension. Zextal did the only thing he could. We would be honored to observe your regatta, Director Chen. Wonderful. Tommy, why don't you give our guests a quick overview of the basics? I'm sure they'd love to learn about the fascinating history of human space travel. As the young human's enthusiastic voice began explaining concepts that threatened to shake Zylaxian physics to its foundations, Zextal made a mental note. Update the Empire's first contact protocols. Sometimes it seemed the most dangerous thing in the galaxy was human hospitality. The art of misunderstanding. The Zylaxian High Command's emergency session was in its 4th hour. Dozens of the Empire's most decorated military leaders sat around a massive crystalline table, their scales shifting through various shades of distress as they reviewed Supreme Commander Zextal's report. Preposterous, Grand Strategist Vixna declared, her ceremonial armor gleaming under the chamber's harsh lights. No species could advance from primitive fusion drives to dimensional engineering in less than 3 centuries. Your sensors must have been malfunctioning. Zextal's scales rippled with barely contained frustration. The sensors were perfect. The humans didn't just master dimensional engineering. They consider it elementary school material, and that's not even the most disturbing part. He gestured, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed a recording from the human space station, where a group of children were gathered around what appeared to be a science fair project. The title banner read, Making Your First Quantum Pocket Universe, a Beginner's Guide. This, Zextal continued, is what they consider suitable for their young. The child who created this demonstration offered to explain it to my senior science officer, in small words. The chamber erupted in hisses and clicks of disbelief. Admiral Kextor, commander of the Empire's Third Fleet, rose from his seat. Then we must act quickly, if they possess such technology. They invited us to a racing competition. Zextal interrupted. When I attempted to demonstrate our weapon systems, they offered technical support. Their station director suggested we might need help with our vintage equipment. Meanwhile, aboard Earth's orbital diplomatic station, Sarah Chen was having a much more pleasant meeting. The station's conference room featured a spectacular view of Earth, though most of the Zalaxian diplomatic team seemed more interested in studying the apparently simple water dispenser in the corner. So, Chen smiled warmly at the assembled aliens. Shall we discuss cultural exchange programs? We'd love to share our educational resources. Ambassador Texelor, hastily appointed after Zextal's report reached the Empire, tried to maintain his diplomatic composure. Director Chen, while we appreciate your generosity, we must address certain concerns. Our preliminary analysis suggests your species may have acquired advanced technology through questionable means. Chen's smile didn't waver. Oh, which technologies are you curious about? All of them, Texelor replied flatly. Your development timeline defies all known models of technological progression. It's simply not possible to. He was interrupted by a small commotion at the door. A group of human children on a school field trip had wandered into the conference room. Mrs. Martinez, one child called out excitedly, "Can we show the aliens our science projects? Please." The teacher, a woman with kind eyes and infinite patience, looked apologetically at Chen. "I'm sorry, Director. We were supposed to be touring the historical exhibits." "Not at all," Chen replied, her eyes twinkling. Ambassador Texelor was just expressing interest in human technological development. Perhaps the children could offer some insight. Before any of the Zalaxian diplomats could object, the children had surrounded them, pulling out various devices and projects from their bags. A young girl tugged at Texelor's ceremonial robe. "Look at my quantum entanglement demonstration," she beamed. "I used it to send a message to my cousin on Mars. Want to try? It's super easy." Texelor stared at the device in the child's hands, a seemingly simple arrangement of crystals and light that, according to his scanner, was casually violating several laws of physics. This is a toy." "Well, yeah," the girl shrugged. "The real ones are way bigger. This is just for practice." Back in the Zalaxian High Command, the debate had taken a darker turn. "We must learn their secrets," Admiral Kextor insisted. "Perhaps if we analyze their waste disposal systems, their abandoned technology." A junior intelligence officer cleared their throat membranes. "About that, sir, we tried. Their garbage appears to be more advanced than our best equipment." "Their garbage," Kextor repeated slowly. "Yes, sir. We found what appeared to be a discarded entertainment device. It's currently rewriting our understanding of quantum mechanics." In the diplomatic station's conference room, the impromptu science fair continued. One child had set up what they called a basic gravity manipulation field, causing several Zalaxian data pads to float gently toward the ceiling. Another was enthusiastically explaining how they had created a small temporal observation window for their history class. "And that's how we watch dinosaurs in real time," the boy concluded proudly. "Though Mom says I'm not allowed to bring any home anymore." Ambassador Texelor's scales had shifted to a pale shade of gray. "Director Chen," he managed weakly, "perhaps we should discuss a different approach to our diplomatic relations." "Of course," Chen nodded. "We're always happy to help developing civilizations. In fact, we have an excellent outreach program for emerging spacefaring species. Would you like to see our introductory materials?" Introductory. Texelor's translator struggled with his suddenly stressed vocal patterns. "Director, the Zalaxian Empire spans 3,000 star systems. We have conquered hundreds of species. Our technology is at a fascinating stage of development," Chen completed diplomatically. "We find the study of technological evolution absolutely fascinating. In fact, we've preserved examples of similar development stages in our historical museums. Would you like a tour? As if to punctuate her point, one of the children's science projects chose that moment to briefly fold a small portion of space-time into a decorative shape. The Zylaxian diplomats watched in horror as reality itself was casually rearranged into what appeared to be a replica of Earth's Eiffel Tower. "Don't worry," the child responsible assured them. "It's totally safe. We're not allowed to make permanent changes to the fabric of space-time until high school." In that moment, Ambassador Texelor realized that his empire's position in the galaxy had fundamentally changed. The humans weren't being condescending or threatening. They were genuinely trying to be helpful. Somehow, that made it even worse. "Director Chen," he said carefully, "I believe my government would be very interested in learning more about your educational programs." "Wonderful," Chen beamed. "We can start with the basics. Tommy, would you mind showing the ambassador your quantum mechanics homework? I believe it covers some principles their ships currently use." As the children eagerly gathered around to share their schoolwork, Texelor sent a priority message to the High Command. "Cancel invasion plans. Recommend immediate cultural exchange program. And perhaps we should update our science textbooks. Pride and protocols." Admiral Kextor paced the bridge of the Eternal Glory, his flagship and the newest addition to the Zylaxian fleet. Behind him, a holographic display showed the gathered might of the Third Fleet, 500 of the Empire's most advanced warships, assembled for what he had termed a military readiness demonstration. "The humans must learn respect," he muttered, his scales flickering between shades of determination and anxiety. "We cannot allow our position in the galaxy to be undermined by their educational outreach programs, sir," his executive officer supplied helpfully. Kextor's tail lashed in irritation. "Precisely. The Empire has received 17 different proposals for cultural exchange initiatives in the past week alone. 3 planetary governors have requested human scientific advisors for their children's schools. This ends today." The fleet hung in space at the edge of the Sol system, their formation perfect, their weapons primed. Kextor had specifically chosen this location for its symbolic value, just beyond the orbit of what humans still called Pluto. "Send the message," he commanded. Across human space, communication channels lit up with the Zylaxian broadcast. Kextor's image appeared on screens and holographic displays, his voice carrying what he believed to be appropriate gravitas. "Attention human authorities. The Zylaxian Empire demands your immediate attention. We have assembled the greatest fleet in known space to demonstrate the true might of." Oh, wonderful. The interruption came from what appeared to be a human family's private vessel. "Kids, come quick. Remember that documentary about historical military formations. This is perfect." Kextor's scales rippled in confusion as his broadcast was suddenly shared across thousands of channels, with running commentary from what seemed to be amateur military historians. "Look at that quantum wake signature, classic mid-development pattern. They're still using parallel dimension anchoring. Check out those weapon arrays. Anyone want to guess the vintage? I'd say about 300 years behind current tech. Is this part of the Museum of Space History's living exhibition program?" The Admiral's tail was now twitching so violently that his ceremonial armor rattled. "This is not an exhibition. This is a demonstration of. Dad, can we scan their ships? I need to document pre-singularity drive configurations for my thesis." "Now, honey, remember what happened last time you scanned historical vessels. That poor Centaurian captain's navigation system got very confused." In the void of space, hundreds of small craft had begun appearing around the Zylaxian fleet. They were clearly civilian vessels, family ships, private yachts, even what appeared to be several floating food service platforms. The humans were treating his military demonstration like a festival. "This is intolerable." Kextor hissed. "Weapons officer, target the nearest human vessel. Show them we are not to be trifled with." The Eternal Glory's main weapon array powered up, its energy readings climbing to planet-cracking levels. The beam lanced out toward a small family shuttle. and splashed harmlessly against what appeared to be a child's science project. "Mom," a young voice called out. "My homework caught something." Through the fleet's sensors, Kextor watched in horror as the energy from his flagship's most powerful weapon was casually contained within what looked like a grade school student's energy containment field. The child was now excitedly explaining the principles of weapon energy recycling to what seemed to be a classroom viewing the event remotely. "As you can see, class, even primitive energy weapons can be useful for demonstrating basic particle conservation principles. Now, who can tell me the most efficient way to convert this excess energy into something useful?" A chorus of young voices began offering suggestions, ranging from powering ice cream makers to creating small artificial stars for garden lighting. Kextor's command staff watched in stunned silence as their ultimate display of military might was turned into an impromptu physics lesson. The Admiral's scales had turned a pale shade of gray never before recorded in Xylaxian history. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, voice trembling, "we're receiving grading criteria. The humans are evaluating our performance for their military history classes. Current score, 6 out of 10, another officer added. They've marked us down for predictable formation patterns and inefficient energy utilization." The situation deteriorated further when several human educational ships arrived, their external displays showing helpful diagrams explaining exactly why the Xylaxian fleet's tactics were outdated. A cheerful AI was offering real-time suggestions for improvement. "Have you considered a hyperdimensional approach?" the AI inquired politely. "Your current three-dimensional formation leaves you quite vulnerable to, well, basically everything. We have some lovely historical examples of how this problem was solved during humanity's early space development period." A new voice joined the communications channel, familiar and diplomatic. "Admiral Kextor." Sarah Chen's tone was gentle but firm. "While we appreciate your enthusiasm for historical reenactment, we generally prefer to schedule such large-scale demonstrations in advance. The paperwork for unauthorized educational displays can be quite tedious." "This is not a demonstration," Kextor roared. "This is an excellent opportunity for cultural exchange," Chen completed smoothly. "In fact, we have several school groups who would love to learn more about traditional Xylaxian military practices. Would you be willing to participate in a few educational workshops?" The Admiral's protest died in his throat as he noticed several human vessels casually executing maneuvers that his best scientists had declared theoretically impossible. One family ship had apparently stopped for a picnic, its occupants seemingly unconcerned that their small craft was simultaneously existing in several dimensions. Kextor's mighty voice had diminished to a whisper. "I suppose we could discuss educational opportunities." "Splendid." Chen's enthusiasm was genuine. "We'll start with a basic overview of post-quantum civilization development. Tommy, would you mind sharing your middle school presentation on the historical transition from military to educational space exploration?" As the young human's voice began explaining concepts that made the Empire's best scientists weep, Kextor realized a fundamental truth. In the face of sufficiently advanced technology, pride becomes indistinguishable from comedy. The greatest fleet in the Empire's history hung in space, surrounded by human pleasure craft and food vendors, while children used their weapons fire for science projects. Somewhere in the distance, a small ship was advertising authentic pre-quantum ice cream, made with real spatial dimensions. Kextor did the only thing he could. He ordered his crew to take notes. The great revelation. The Xylaxian High Command's emergency bunker hadn't been used in over 500 years. Now, its crystalline walls contained the Empire's most senior leaders, all watching in stunned silence as reports flooded in from across known space. "They're everywhere," Grand Strategist Vixno whispered, her scales a pale shade of disbelief. "They've always been everywhere." The holographic displays showed what the Empire's best sensors had finally managed to detect, after being upgraded with what the humans called basic scanning protocols. The galaxy was threaded with human presence, Invisible networks of transportation and communication that made the Empire's proudest achievements look like cave paintings. Supreme Commander Zextal gestured to one of the displays. This is a human transit route. They call it a commuter lane. Their civilians use it to travel between stars. For shopping trips. Shopping, Admiral Kextor repeated numbly. His once proud bearing had deflated considerably since his fleet's educational experience. Yes, Zextal continued. Apparently, there's a delightful ice cream parlor in the Andromeda Galaxy. They do special flavors using exotic matter. In Earth's orbital diplomatic station, Sarah Chen was having a much more pleasant afternoon. She sat across from Ambassador Texelor, who was staring into a cup of what humans called coffee, as if it might contain answers to the universe. So, Chen smiled warmly. Shall we discuss the actual technological integration proposal? Texelor's scales shifted through several shades of anxiety. You mean, there's more than what we've seen? Oh, of course. We've only been showing you the publicly available technology. The basic stuff that everyone uses. We thought it would be less overwhelming that way. The ambassador's translator glitched briefly, unable to process his stress response. Less overwhelming. A small commotion at the door interrupted them. A group of human teenagers burst in, their excitement palpable. Director Chen. Director Chen. One called out. Can we show the ambassador our science fair project? We've figured out how to fold space-time into origami. Chen's smile never wavered. Now, children, what have we said about manipulating fundamental forces without proper supervision? But Ms. Rodriguez approved it. Another teen protested. And we promise not to create any temporary universes this time. Texelor's scales had gone completely white. This is your youth science fair. Oh, just the junior division, Chen explained. The senior projects are a bit more advanced. Last year's winner found a way to knit quantum strings into sweaters. Very practical during dimensional shifts. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the Zalaxian Empire was facing an existential crisis. Their sensors, now capable of detecting previously invisible human activity, revealed a civilization so vast and advanced that it defied comprehension. They have coffee shops between galaxies, a science officer reported, voice trembling. Their children build pocket universes for fun. Their waste recycling systems are more advanced than our best quantum computers. In a small classroom on Mars, a human teacher was giving a history lesson that would have given the Zylaxian High Command collective cardiac arrest. And so, she explained to her attentive students, when humanity first achieved post-scarcity technology about 200 years ago, we had an important decision to make. Can anyone tell me what that was? A young boy raised his hand. Whether to reveal ourselves to developing civilizations. Exactly. And does anyone remember why we chose to remain subtle about our capabilities? A girl in the front row bounced in her seat. Because it's more fun to let them discover things gradually. And also because last time we showed everything at once, that one empire had a complete emotional breakdown. Very good. Now, who can tell me about the importance of positive technological mentorship? Back in the diplomatic station, Ambassador Texelor was trying to process the latest revelation. You're saying, all this time, your entire civilization has been quietly existing alongside everyone else. Chen finished. Yes, we found it works better that way. Less stressful for developing civilizations. We just maintain a small visible presence and let everyone advance at their own pace. But, Texelor's translator struggled with his increasingly stressed vocalizations. The Empire has been planning to conquer Earth. Chen's laugh was kind. Oh, we know. We thought it was adorable. Like watching a toddler challenge a quantum physicist to a math contest. We've been using your invasion plans as case studies in our diplomatic training programs. At that moment, one of the teenage scientists managed to successfully fold a small portion of space-time into what appeared to be a paper crane. It flew around the room, trailing possibilities and alternative dimensions like cosmic origami. Very nice work, Chen applauded. Though remember to maintain quantum coherence in the creases. We don't want another incident like the Great Paper Airplane Physics Fair of 2023. Texelor watched the space-time crane do a loop around his head, leaving a trail of perfectly formed mathematical equations in its wake. What happened at that fair? Oh, nothing serious, Chen assured him. Though we did have to temporarily borrow a few empty galaxies to store the extras until the students learned to fold everything back properly. In the Galaxian High Command bunker, the latest reports were causing several senior officials to develop interesting new scale patterns. They've been watching us, Admiral Kextor muttered. All this time, they've been watching us. Every space battle, every conquest, every parade, Zextal added. Apparently, they have quite an extensive collection of recordings. They use them in their elementary schools' Introduction to Historical Civilizations classes. A junior officer burst into the chamber, scales flashing emergency patterns. Sirs, we've just detected. Calm yourself, Vixna commanded. What have you detected? Human children. Sir, they're using our sacred imperial palace as a field trip destination. They're taking selfies with our quantum defense grid. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of upgraded sensors, now showing them just how thoroughly human civilization permeated the galaxy. Their mighty empire, they realized, had been operating inside what amounted to a vast, benevolent nature preserve. Well, Zextal finally said, at least they're willing to teach us. Somewhere in the station, the space-time origami crane had begun teaching itself quantum physics, a new understanding. 1 year after first contact, the Galaxian Empire had changed more than it had in the previous 1,000 years. The Imperial Palace's Grand Reception Hall, once a showcase of military might, now hosted a very different kind of gathering. And this, Tommy Chen explained to a group of wide-eyed Galaxian students, is how we first learned to manipulate quantum states for fun. Who wants to try making their own temporary universe? Supreme Commander Zextal watched from the sidelines, his scales now permanently shifted to a more relaxed shade of blue. Next to him, Sarah Chen smiled as she sipped her coffee, imported directly from a cafe that existed slightly sideways from conventional reality. They're adapting well, she observed, much faster than we expected. Zextal nodded, watching as a young Galaxian successfully created a small quantum bubble. It's still difficult to believe how much we didn't know, how much we couldn't even see. Around them, the palace had become a hub of human Galaxian cooperation. Former war rooms now housed educational centers. The Imperial Throne Room had been converted into what humans called a makerspace, complete with basic reality manipulation tools and quantum crafting stations. Admiral Kextor's proposal was approved. By the way, Chen mentioned, we'll be converting the Third Fleet into a mobile historical education center. The ships will make excellent practical examples for teaching about technological evolution. In orbit above the Galaxian homeworld, that same fleet was already being repurposed. Human engineering teams worked alongside Galaxian crews, installing what they called basic safety upgrades, though these basic systems were centuries beyond the Empire's former technology. Remember, a human instructor was explaining to a group of former weapons officers, dimensional physics is like pottery. You have to feel the shape of space-time before you try to mold it. No, don't worry about the temporary dimension you just created. It'll merge back with the main timeline once you release the quantum tension. Back in the palace, Ambassador Texelor was giving a presentation to the former High Command about the Empire's new role in the galaxy. As a recognized developing civilization, he explained, his scales showing pride rather than shame, we have unprecedented access to human educational resources. Their basic technology integration program alone has advanced our understanding by centuries. And the conquests? Former Grand Strategist Vixna asked. Our military campaigns. transformed into historical research expeditions. Texelor replied, "It turns out many species are quite interested in studying their own technological development paths. We're helping document the natural progression of civilizations, under human supervision, of course." A small commotion drew their attention to the palace gardens, where a group of human and Zelaxian children were working on their first joint science project. They had somehow managed to create a small zoo of light-based creatures, each one formed from carefully folded photons. "Mom," Tommy called out excitedly, "we figured out how to make quantum pets. Can we keep them? They don't even eat regular matter." Chen laughed. "As long as you remember to walk them through all 11 dimensions regularly, and no letting them chase passing spacecraft again." The former empire was learning that the galaxy was a far more interesting place than they had imagined. Their mighty warships now carried students instead of soldiers. Their fearsome weapons had been converted into teaching tools, and their children were learning to play with the fabric of reality alongside human friends. In Earth's orbital diplomatic station, a new exhibit had opened, "The Great Misunderstanding," a case study in civilizational contact. It featured holorecordings of the first encounters, including Admiral Kextor's infamous fleet demonstration, now a popular example used in courses on diplomatic history. The key, a human professor explained to a mixed class of species, is understanding that advanced technology doesn't need to be intimidating. It's all about perspective. For instance, who can tell me why we let civilizations discover our true capabilities gradually? A young Zelaxian raised their hand, scales shimmering with enthusiasm. "Because it's like teaching someone to swim. You don't throw them into a quantum ocean first. You start with a regular pool." Excellent metaphor. Though please remember not to create actual quantum oceans without proper certification. In the palace's new quantum engineering lab, Zextal watched as a former battle fleet commander carefully manipulated spacetime under the guidance of a human teenager. "You're getting better," Tommy encouraged. "Your quantum folding technique is really improving. Want to try making a simple pocket dimension next?" The commander's scales flickered with concentration as they worked. "It's still amazing to me," they admitted. "A year ago, we thought we were one of the most advanced civilizations in space. Now we're learning basic physics from human children." "That's the fun part about science," Tommy grinned. "There's always more to learn. Did you know we just discovered a whole new set of physical laws last week? Mom says I can study them once I finish my regular quantum mechanics homework." The transformation of the Zelaxian Empire had become a model for future first contact scenarios. Their rapid acceptance of their new reality and enthusiasm for learning had impressed even the most experienced human diplomats. "They're already asking about advanced classes," Chen reported to Earth's Diplomatic Council. "Several of their young scientists have shown remarkable aptitude for quantum engineering. One of them even managed to solve the pocket universe storage problem, though we did have to help them retrieve their homework from the resulting dimensional fold." As the day drew to a close, Zextal stood with Chen in the palace's observation dome, watching their children play with realities in ways he once thought impossible. "You know," he mused, his translator now perfectly calibrated to convey subtle emotional nuances, "a year ago, I would have seen this as the end of our empire. Now I realize it was just the beginning." Chen nodded, watching as a group of students successfully created their first stable temporal loop, carefully supervised to prevent any accidental causality violations. "That's the thing about the universe," she replied. "It's so much more interesting when you stop trying to conquer it and start trying to understand it instead." Above them, the stars twinkled in patterns that Zextal could now recognize as the quantum signatures of human transit routes, communication networks, and yes, even that famous ice cream shop in Andromeda. The galaxy was alive with possibilities he had never imagined, and his people were finally learning to see it all. "Though I do have one question," he added. "Will we ever understand why you decided to reveal yourselves through a children's science fair?" Chen's laugh echoed through the quantum-enhanced acoustics of the dome. Sometimes the best way to teach is to let others think they're discovering things for themselves. Besides, she winked, watching your face when Tommy explained basic dimensional engineering was priceless. In the garden below, human and Galaxian children continued to reshape small pieces of reality, their laughter transcending species, physics, and the very fabric of space-time itself. The former empire had found something far more valuable than conquest. They had found wonder.